How's it going, everyone? Matt Vanacoro with Waves Factory here, and we are checking out Les Parisiens. This is the definitive accordion instrument from Waves Factory. It's got 3 different accordions meticulously sampled with a ton of different ways to access the sounds. Let's check out this first one, Blanc. So some great sounds out of this accordion. Now you've got the ability to switch from a double set of reeds to a single right down here. This switch on many different accordions switches to different sounding reeds to give you a different timbre. You can get almost like stops of the organ. So if you listen, we got a different sound already, as opposed to this nice chorused double. Now you'll notice that I'm playing in a couple of different regions here. My right hand is playing in this white note region. And we've got a nice animation going. And the left hand is playing in this far left region. To get those notes the accordionist would typically play with the left hand. And it's a totally different sound and register. Now there's a middle region right there that you see with some differently shaded green notes that we will check out with the next instrument. And speaking of that, as I said, we've got 3 completely different instruments. So that's the first one, Blanc. This one's Noir. And once again, you can see single and double sets of reeds. Now, I've got the dynamics right now controlled by how hard I play. If I play a soft note, it's softer. If I hit it harder, it's harder. But I can also control them with the mod wheel if I wanted to. So if I wanted to dedicate one hand or I wanted to map the velocity in my DAW, it's easy to switch it over to mod wheel and you can go ahead and map that velocity in a little different way. So we'll just try it real quick. Pop it on the mod wheel and you'll see I'll rotate the mod wheel to its lowest position. I'll play a chord. You'll hear it grow as I increase that mod wheel value. And then diminish as I decrease the mod wheel value. And of course, that's easily MIDI mappable, so you can get those realistic, nice accordion swells. Now, I did mention that Les Parisiens was meticulously recorded. It was recorded with 3 different mic positions, and we can access that by opening up the mixer. So from here, you can see the combination of a close mic and then the stereo mid and far microphones. Now, with any of these microphone sets can be loaded or unloaded up here at the top. So if I want to save on some resources, if I'm only using the close mics, or if I want to combine any of the 2, you can easily load or unload those samples. You have the ability to pan it right here, mute and solo any of the microphones to work on them, and then create your own mix. So if you want the accordion to sound far away, which we do sometimes in a lot of accordion, if you're mixing this into a production and you're not doing a solo piece, you might want it to sound a little more far away, but still have the attack of that close mic and accent the further mic. Now I've got this stereo width, which you can ratchet it down to 0 and get a completely mono compatible mix, or you can invert the stereo microphones by going to values that are below 0 from there. So a lot of configurability for the way that you get your sound, although I just love how robust it is, and I leave those generally at 0 there for most of my solo accordion work. All right. We also have a really robust effects engine. So if I go to the effects tab, you can see the ability to place effects on just one microphone set or on the master. So if I wanted to get a little more ambience out of this, I can easily just go on the master effect and just add some reverb. Now, of course, we'll probably want to pull back the wet effect a little bit, but let's see where we're at. Yep. Nice. And if I wanted to compress the close mics to get some of the clicks under control, if I like the sound but the clicks are a little too much, some of those close-up artifacts, I can go ahead and put a compressor just on the close mics and restrict the output of those microphones. So see, everything lives independently. and you're able to get the sound that you want. So it's a really, really great system. If you want to, you can disable any of the effects and leave them up there so that you don't lose the settings, or you can just remove them entirely. Okay, let's take a look at the third instrument, Rogue. This one's probably the most complex and diverse of all of them. You can see a lot of different stops are available. I love how you hear the sound of pushing the buttons for the various stops too. You can automate that if you want to. If you're recording this in a sequence, right-click here and learn MIDI CC automation, and then you can easily automate it so you get that sampled sound as you're playing. So there's that violin, but let's get a typical musette. And then, of course, the master. Nice, big, powerful sound. So one of the things that the accordion allows you to do is to do some really cool accompaniment patterns. And we've got a great system to access those. So if you open up the sequencer, you'll see this middle range of notes that I skipped over before. It has chord recognition. You can play a chord and hold it and get accompaniment patterns. And it doesn't matter what inversion you use. As long as you're playing a major chord, a minor chord, or a seventh chord, you can really access those different accompaniments. Now, there's presets built in. I like number 3. We've got a nice typical pattern here. Now, if you look at this sequencer, you see we've got bass fundamental notes, thirds, and fifths. So we can actually adjust that pattern. So right now, if I wanted to add in an extra fifth in between those two chords right up here, you see this is the chord track. Oh, I don't have it in the second one, so I can easily click it there and enable it, and now my pattern is symmetrical. So it's easy to go ahead and change that pattern the way you see fit. If I want 3 chords right there. And then you can still use the upper notes and add to it as it's going. So the sequencer is incredibly diverse. You've got the ability to use your root, third, and fifth and the chord. You can adjust the tempo of the entire preset. You can adjust the amount of steps it's using. You can even swing it if you want to get a little jazzy. Here we go, to any degree that you want. And you can individually adjust the length of the notes. So if I decide, hey, those chords are actually a little long for me, I want them shorter, and maybe the bass note's a little longer. Maybe I went a little too far with the chords. So it's entirely customizable. There's tons of presets, and you can edit them as you see fit. Now let's go to the settings page. We've got a couple of different settings options. First of all, the amount of round robin. Now you can go as high as 6 different repetitions with the round robin to add some realism. So if you listen, as I play single notes, if I set it to 1, it's only using 1 sample at that velocity level. You hear the same sample over and over, but if I go to 6, you hear a lot of variance, and that's because depending on where you are in the actuation of the whole accordion, the note can sound totally differently. By default, it's set to 2 because if you go a little too far, sometimes you can get a bit of an unwanted effect where it starts to get some really wildly different notes, but it is available to you if you want. Now, we can restrict the dynamic range, so depending on how much dynamics you want, you can go ahead and have really louder dynamics the whole time, no matter how lightly you push the keys, or you can give lots of dynamics so that when you push the keys lightly, you get light, and when you push them hard, you get louder sounds. Now that's related to this velocity curve. You can actually adjust the velocity curve to match your MIDI controller. So if you want to adjust the curve a little bit so that it matches, make it a little more parabolic, a little less, a little more exponential, you can actually make it so that it matches the MIDI controller that you're using. So I'm using like an Arturia Key Lab, so I know that that one accents the upper notes a little more than I'd like. So what I can do is actually adjust the curve so it takes longer to get to the upper notes. So if you find that you're getting to those upper velocity levels too soon, you can match it to your MIDI controller. we've got the ability to completely customize the volumes of the sound, from the release to the air to the keys and the register keys. So if you listen, got that mechanical keys really making more noise or less. You can do the same with the register keys. And there's a release too. If you listen, as I play a chord, when I let go, there's a release sound. If I crank that up, you can hear that release sound get really accented, as well as the air. So it really makes a big difference. And then finally, you have complete control over the sample itself. So you can adjust all the articulations, or just for the notes or for the chords. And you can decide, hey, I can create some really weird stuff by slowing down the attack. And you're not getting really any of that key sound. Or if I speed it up, I'm getting a lot of it. And you can even offset the start of the sample, so it starts a little bit later and you miss that part entirely. So it's a really realistic sound, this instrument, but you can also craft it to get some really outer worldly stuff. It really is the ultimate collection of 3 really fantastic sounding accordions. So Les Parisiens from Waves Factory.